Welcome back to History and Freemasonry, where ancient symbols reveal timeless truths. Clandestine and irregular Freemasonry. For centuries, Freemasonry has stood as a brotherhood built on timeless principles: brotherly love, relief, and truth. Guided by ancient landmarks and a belief in the great architect of the universe, its degrees and traditions have traveled from stone quarries to grand temples around the world. But alongside its hallowed halls, a quiet conflict has raged. A conflict over who truly has the right to call themselves a Mason. This is the fascinating story of clandestine and irregular Masonry, and how some of the most famous outsiders weren't really outsiders at all. Our story begins in 1775, on the eve of the American Revolution. In Boston, a free black man named Prince Hall and 14 others petitioned a local lodge for membership. They were turned away, but their belief in Masonic principles, the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, did not waver. That same year, they were initiated by a traveling military lodge of the British Army. They called themselves African Lodge No. 1, and in 1784, they received a formal charter from the Grand Lodge of England as African Lodge No. 1, 459. When communication with England broke down after the Revolution, African Lodge declared independence and began chartering lodges of its own, eventually forming what became known as Prince Hall Freemasonry. However, most Grand Lodges dismissed them as clandestine, arguing that a single lodge charter did not grant the authority to establish an entire Grand Lodge. More than 200 years later, however, the majority of Grand Lodges in America have finally recognized Prince Hall Freemasonry as regular and legitimate. To compare and contrast, mainstream Freemasonry and Prince Hall Masonry have followed distinct historical and cultural paths. Over the years, some Prince Hall lodges have incorporated elements from historically black fraternities such as Omega Psi Phi and Alpha Phi Alpha. While these additions reflect cultural pride and expression, they have, in some cases, diluted the solemn traditions of Freemasonry, turning sacred ritual into performance and drifting from the craft's ancient foundations. Some lodges have gone too far, losing sight of the true essence, roots, and spiritual origins of Masonry. However, it is important to recognize that not all Prince Hall Masons have followed this path. Many remain steadfast and true to the legacy of African Lodge No. 1, honoring the principles upon which it was founded and upholding the dignity and depth of the Masonic tradition. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, another schism was brewing. In 1877, the Grand Orient of France removed the requirement that Masons profess belief in a supreme being. For centuries, Masons had sworn their oaths on a holy book, but the Grand Orient declared that moral men, regardless of faith or creed, should be welcome. The United Grand Lodge of England disagreed, cutting ties and declaring the Grand Orient irregular. To this day, the Grand Orient stands as a beacon of secular humanism, but unrecognized by regular Grand Lodges. In early 20th century England, another question arose. Could women become Masons? Groups like the Order of Women, Freemasons, and the Honorable Fraternity of Ancient Freemasons formed, offering women the same rituals and degrees as men. They adhered to the traditions of the craft, but were deemed irregular, not because of their practice, but because of their gender. And then there were those whose ambitions soared beyond the craft's 3 degrees into mysticism. The rite of Memphis-Misraïm, emerging in 19th century France, claimed Egyptian origins and offered 90 or more degrees, fascinating seekers of secret knowledge. But to regular Freemasonry, it strayed too far from the landmarks and was deemed irregular. Even within Prince Hall Freemasonry, divisions arose. In 1847, the National Grand Lodge, the so-called National Compact, sought to unify black lodges under one authority. But as Prince Hall Grand Lodges began asserting their own independence, the compact became marginalized, its lodges considered irregular by both mainstream and Prince Hall Masonry. The story of Freemasonry is not just about ritual and tradition. It is also about inclusion, exclusion, and the struggle to remain true to the landmarks of the craft. A true Mason is one who lives by the square, walks in truth, follows the way, and seeks the light. But make no mistake, there is a profound difference between mainstream Freemasonry and clandestine imitators. One stands firm on the foundation of truth and centuries of authentic history. The others are born of rebellion, rewriting history and reshaping Masonry into something of their own design. If you find Masonic history enlightening, please like, share, and subscribe, and continue your journey in the light of the great architect of the universe. Thank you.